everyone, it's John from What Up, and welcome back to another video. Tonight we're going to talk about that leaked episode 1 script that hit the internet a few weeks ago. Now, this thing has been floating around for a long time. We're talking far longer than a couple of weeks. In fact, I seen it myself a long time ago. Now, this is legit. It is real. It is an earlier version of the script. Obviously not the final script. However, a lot of it is almost exactly the same as what we see in the show, except for a few key scenes here and there. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through the script and we're going to talk about those particular scenes, how they could have fit in, and in fact, how some of them probably should have been kept in the show, because a lot of people would have really liked to see them. Now, if you're new to the channel and you don't know what I do here, I cover Wheel of Time show news, so anything and everything to do with the Sony and Amazon production, that's what we talk about here. And if you like Wheel of Time stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. I put out quite a few videos per week. They're all Wheel of Time related, and I'm going to keep doing that, covering news, leaks, rumors, and castings right up until Season 2 drops, hopefully sometime late this fall, early winter. Now, before we get into the video, spoiler warning, in this video we're talking about a script for episode 1 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. So, if you haven't seen the first episode of the actual show, be forewarned, we're going to ruin plot points and character arcs from that episode. Now, all of that being said, let's get on to the video. Alright, so we're going to talk about that leaked script for episode 1. The script itself was leaked in its entirety a few weeks ago, and I've left a link to it down below in the description box if you folks want to read it, although snippets and little notes from it were leaked here and there over the last couple of months. Now, I will let you know that this script is 100% real. It is. It's a real pilot script for the show. I seen it a very long time ago, and it's one of the things that got me very excited for the first episode. But I will let you know that a lot of things have changed. Now, don't get me wrong, most of the script is almost completely intact for how things were seen on the screen, at least in some way, shape, or form. But there were some scenes in this that didn't make the cut whatsoever. Some of them I do know were filmed. And in fact, we've seen evidence of some of them being filmed either in X-ray cut materials, little snippets here and there, or in the teasers and trailers they released before the show came out. Now, the original cold open for the show was a bit different than what we've seen. Now, in the show itself, we've seen Leandrin and the Red Alashik chasing down someone, and then we find out later on that's a man who can use the one power. You don't really see her gentle him or what she does to him on the screen, but you get the idea that it's kind of bad, it's not great, and you get the idea, too, that he's maybe already starting to go insane, or there's something wrong there, because he's seeing someone who doesn't exist next to him. Not a bad cold open, a little confusing, especially for non-book readers. Everyone I talked to about it had varying different opinions on it. They either really liked it, they really hated it, or they were just confused. Myself, I was a little confused. I didn't enjoy the cold open of the show. This cold open for the show is a little bit different. It would have been Moiraine in the White Tower, speaking with Katara Sedai when she gave her foretelling for the Dragon Reborn. I think, in my opinion, this would have been a much better open for the show, basically because you explain the White Tower, the Aes Sedai, what's going on, the hunt for the dragon. You get a bunch of stuff out of the way immediately with maybe a 3 or 4 minute cold open than you did in the cold open they showed for the actual show. That's my opinion anyway. Anyway, I really like this one. It's not exactly word for word what it is from the book series, but it's pretty close. And the only difference here, I would say, is that Katara is completely blind in the show. She has milky white eyes and she can't see anything. A little bit different than the book series, but again, a lot of stuff is explained in this particular cold open that I really enjoyed. Now we're going to move on down through here. Hopefully nobody gets motion sickness. That cold open ends with Katara dying, which is really neat in my opinion, because then it just smashes right to the title screen, The Wheel of Time. I think that would have been a really great cold open. Then we have this. 20 years later, you have that scene. We've seen this in the trailers and the teasers where Gwen comes up out of the water and she's covered in all of the dyes and paints, with a lot of foreshadowing for what may happen later on in the series. It was, quite honestly, when we first seen it, one of the most beautiful scenes in all of the trailers, and a lot of the fans were very excited to see it on the screen. They cut it. It never actually made it to the show, which kind of boggled my mind just a little bit because it was such a beautiful scene. It was so well received. However, by the time the teasers and the trailers came out, at that point they had already fully edited the show, so they couldn't act on any feedback they were getting from the fandom. Now, this particular scene is a little bit different. So when Nynaeve pushes Egwene off the cliff, this happens prior to that. Nynaeve actually slaughters a lamb and pours its blood over Egwene as part of the ritual. Very graphic, and it would have been very neat to see in the screen. A little bit removed from maybe the Wheel of Time, but I think it would have been neat to see either way. But again, that scene, although it was filmed, was cut. So then we have this next scene here. This is what we're talking about here. This is where Nynaeve cuts the neck of the lamb and covers Egwene in the blood. Again, didn't make the final cut of the show. I don't know if this particular part of that scene was filmed or not, but I hope it was. I hope we get to see it at some point or another, because that would have been really cool. All right. Like I said, that particular scene ends when Nynaeve pushes Egwene right off the bridge, and then the rest of that we've actually seen in the show. Now, most of the stuff that I'm skipping here is either exactly the same as the show or largely close. I mean, there are a few small differences in either something they're saying or the way the shots are framed. However, mostly it's the same as the show. The next part here is when Tam and Rand are walking into M1's field. Now, in the show, we don't see the Black Rider. We see, a little bit of rock fall, and Rand picks up his bow, and he kind of has a little chuckle about it, but that's it. In the original script here, the Black Rider was there. He was behind almost exactly as it was in the book series. I think that would have been something really neat to include, because it would have had that little element of danger and uncertainty, especially if they showed this and all the other young boys seeing it in the town. But again, this didn't make the final cut, and I don't know if they filmed that or not, but it definitely didn't make it into the show. All right, the next spot we're going to talk about here is Gwen. After the Women's Circle initiation, there's this scene here where Egwene's walking through a meadow and she comes upon Nynaeve, and they talk just a little bit. This sort of kind of made it into the show, but not really. So this scene was completely reworked, and it's basically Gwen and Nynaeve talking about Rand. Quite a bit different than what happened in the show, but again, it's one of those things. I don't think this really matters if it was in there or not. Basically, they're just talking about the fact that she is possibly going to be the Wisdom's apprentice, and then she isn't going to be with Rand. That's this whole scene here. Now we have a bunch of stuff that's almost exactly the same as in the show, and then we get this. So this scene is the first of two sex scenes that were originally written into the first episode. They were both cut. This one, I think, personally, should have made it into the final cut, at least in some way, shape, or form. Mainly because it's between Matt and Dana. Now, there is this particular note in here. All sex scenes in 101 will be focused on the pleasure of the women. Likewise, the female body should be seen as strong and in control in these scenes. This note was leaked a few weeks ago, and not everyone believed this was true, but this was actually written into the script. This particular sex scene between Matt and Dana shows how he got her bracelet. So in the show, you see him eyeing the bracelet in the Wine Spring Inn, and then he just shows up at the Fane with it later on, and it's implied very heavily that he's stolen it, because Fane can't sell it in the Two Rivers because Matt didn't acquire it in a good way. However, this particular scene basically implies that Matt's trading sex for the bracelet, at least in his own mind, because while they do have sex, he focuses heavily on her pleasure, and then he doesn't take any reciprocation whatsoever. He doesn't want it, and he sort of kind of works his magic to push the bracelet off her wrist into the mud, so he didn't actually steal it, and then when she leaves later on, he retrieves it. So yes, it's still stealing, yes, it's still wrong. However, that's something that Matt could have worked out in his own mind, especially the character Matt from the books. It's okay because it's not quite the same as physically taking it off a person. So that's the first sex scene that was not included in the show. Now we're going to go on down here to quite a bit. A lot of this is exactly the same. So Moraine Land entered in the Wine Spring Inn. This is the evening when Rand and Egwene were alone. This is the second sex scene that was cut from the show. So this one here, I think honestly, it should have been cut. I'm not going to read through it here on the screen because it's pretty cringe. However, yeah, that's the best thing I can say about it. This particular sex scene, the way it was written, the way it went on, didn't fit the theme of the show, didn't fit what they're going for at all, and it just read terribly. Maybe they could have filmed it a bit better than it was written, but I didn't enjoy reading it at all. I thought I was a little, you get that little cringy, embarrassing little bit as you're reading it. That's the way I got out of this particular sex scene, although it probably could have been filmed much better. Although I do like the way where they implied things in the show and they didn't actually show it, so there's that. The next thing we're going to talk about here is, it's quite a bit. I mean, this script is mostly complete for what's going on in the show. This is a Badger joke that didn't make it into the show. Rand's talking about when Matt opened the bag, and there's a Badger in there. I just like seeing this here. I just wanted to mention it because I love Badger jokes. I really would have liked to have seen in the show Matt actually have the Badger in the bag as a flashback or whatnot, but again, we got these couple of lines instead. Now we go through the full day, and the next thing we're going to talk about is Winter Night. So the attack on Rand's farm is pretty much identical in this script as it is on the screen. There's not a whole lot of differences there, although we did get the fever dream, the going from the farm into Emond's field. All of that happened in the first episode. So it really took away the mystery of who the Dragon Reborn could be, which honestly is one of my bigger complaints about the first season, why they even bothered to do that. But it was something that a lot of book readers, a lot of fans of this series really wanted to see. Now, non-book readers wouldn't have known any better, wouldn't have known any difference, and honestly, anyone I talked to about this particular scene, they didn't care either way. It didn't bother them that this wasn't in there because they didn't know about it. But this would have been a little bit of fan service if they kept it in. However, it was cut. I'm really hoping that we'll see more of it later on. We did see some little snippets of it here and there, they talked about it a bit in later episodes in the season, but I do want to see it in its entirety, the way it's written here. Really, really, really great scene. All right, so the very last change that I want to talk about is the voiceover at the very end of the episode. Now, in the beginning, we had the foretelling of the Dragon Reborn. That same actress, the one who would have played Gitara Sedai, whoever that would have given the voiceover at the very end of the episode to bookend the episode. So there would have been something at the beginning and something at the end that's familiar. That got changed, obviously, to what we've seen in the show. But the Battle at Winter Night, everything else that happened between the Westwood all the way to the very end when they left the Two Rivers was pretty much the same. I mean, there were small differences here and there, little bits of changes and stuff, but nothing absolutely massive. So this script, although an early inception from what I was told, there wasn't really a whole lot changed between this and what was actually filmed, other than the fact that some of these scenes were cut. Now, I do know that some of the scenes were actually filmed, so the sex scene between Rand and Gwen, I was told, was filmed. The scene where they went through the Westwood was actually filmed. We do know that because we've seen stills from it. The scene where Gwen came out of the pool was filmed. We know that for sure because they showed it in the teasers and the trailers. So my guess is a lot of this stuff was probably actually filmed and is in archives somewhere, and I'm really hoping at some point or another we get an extended edition of the show, because I think it would make a lot more sense and it would cover a lot of those little points and stuff and maybe change and fix some of those pacing issues we had because Amazon was so set on just 1 hour episodes and only 8 of them. Now, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you think of the cold open in this script versus the cold open in the actual show? Personally, I like this script much better, but I want to hear your thoughts on that, what you guys thought. The other thing is what do you think of the other changes, things that were cut that we didn't get to see that are in this script? I think a lot of them would have worked really well in the episode. However, if they included the Westwood stuff, we probably wouldn't have had that whole run during the first season where they were guessing who the Dragon Reborn was, because that would have been a really big indication that Rand's the Dragon Reborn right from the very first episode. I personally did not like that about the show at all, that they kept everybody guessing. I mean, the book, by the first third of the book, you know exactly who the Dragon Reborn was if you could guess, although Amazon and Sony really wanted to keep people guessing here, and I think that most people I talked to weren't really guessing Rand until about the 6th episode. A few people did, but not many. Some people were still on the naive Dragon Reborn train right until Rand declared himself, so to speak, in the show. So let me know what you folks think. What did you think about that as well? Do you think guessing was great? I know a lot of the non-readers, it went over really well with them, and they're a big part of the core audience right now because, I mean, it gave them something to talk about and guess about week to week, which was a good thing. The more talk, the more buzz, the more generation about the show, it made it more popular. A lot of the book readers, especially the hardcore fans, did not enjoy that. I'm in that camp, but it didn't bother me a whole lot, at least not to the extent that it bothers some other people. Anyway, let me know what you folks think in the comments down below. Now, one last thing to mention before I go here. I am going to be setting up a store very shortly. We're talking within the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for that. If you want some Wheel of Time merch and you're not a patron, it's going to include some things that I don't give out to patrons, and maybe a few surprises as well. So keep an eye on my Twitter or my Instagram, so follow me on both. They're both in the description down below for more information on my store when it does get released. All right, thank you so very much for sticking with me here to the very end. Here's to many more.